Alrighty guys, welcome back to another one. I had a request to do some 16 gauge non-toxic squirrel load, small game, things like that. So that's what we're doing here. We're using Bismuth. This is going to be a 1 ounce load going about 1200 FPS. It should make a nice solid squirrel, rabbit, small game load depending on shot size. Bismuth is typically, well, mainly used for waterfowl, but it absolutely can be used for other things, like rabbits and squirrels. Again, depending on shot size. When people think steel shot, they think ducks and goose. But guys, steel shot can be used to get just about anything you want, depending on shot size. TSS shot is typically thought of as a turkey shot material used for turkeys, but TSS can be used for waterfowl. In fact, a lot of companies are now putting TSS and steel shot blends together as waterfowl loads, and it seems to be working pretty well. You get the pattern density and the energy with the TSS pellets, and you get the bigger steel pellets, BBB, Triple B, FT, those big pellets that create bigger wound channels. What I was getting at is any type of shot can be used for any kind of game, as long as you use the proper pellet size. That doesn't apply to buckshot. Obviously, I'm not saying use buckshot to shoot a turkey with. That's just insane. Although I'm sure some people have done it. Anyway, enough rambling. The components we're using today are pretty simple. Hull, powder, wad, shot, that's it. So, the hull we're using is a brand new, primed, purple Shadot hull. 16 gauge, of course. And the wad, let me get the shot out of here, is the Claybuster 1 ounce to 1 1/8 ounce blue wad. Now these are for tapered hulls, which no one makes in 16 gauge anymore. The exception to that being Remington's black 1 ounce game load. That's not a tapered hull, but I've said this many times before. That hull has the internal diameter all the way down of a tapered hull, but it's straight wall, so these wads do fit it no problem. In order to use this in a straight wall shell, like that Shadot right there, we have to pinch out the gas seal to make it, we gotta flare it out to fit the hull better. Or you can use a 1 inch square piece of paper towel, napkin, anything like that to go under the wad, that way it seals the powder to prevent powder migration. You may be asking, why are you using that wad instead of a proper wad for that hull? Well, I ran out of the Z16 Commanders, that's the only reason, and this is a pretty good wad. This shot cup actually holds a little bit more payload than the Z16 does. It is the same capacity, although it does have a shorter shot cup. So, if you think about it, this wad is superior in terms of patterning, but it is not a straight wall wad. And the places you get these from list them as a 1 to 1 1/8 ounce wad, but you can easily do 1 1/4 ounce loads with this thing, even 1 3/8 if you're roll crimp using powders like Longshot, which is what we're using today. And the bismuth we're using is just some number 3. It is alloyed with tin and antimony to make it harder. It's 6% antimony. I don't think there's actually tin in it, but it is 6% antimony, at least that. So it is some pretty hard bismuth, which is a plus. You don't want bismuth deforming, which it can do if it's pure, especially loaded at really high velocity. This one's only going to be about 1200 FPS, but that antimony is nice because it's going to keep it more round, which will help it fly better, which creates better patterns. That being said, bismuth, it's really hard to get a nice round pellet with that. It's just how it is. However, bismuth not being nice and round like lead or steel TSS would be, it doesn't really seem to matter all that much because, well, one, you're mostly shooting waterfowl with it, and you're not looking for such a screaming tight pattern. You want a wider pattern that has good density and coverage for, obviously, waterfowl, but you're not looking for screaming tight patterns with game birds either, like dove, quail, pheasants, stuff like that, or rabbits and squirrels. Yeah, so I don't have any bismuth besides number 3, which would not be my ideal choice for a load like this, but we're using what we got. I would suggest using like a 5 or 6 size pellet if you're hunting squirrels and rabbits. If you're going to hunt doves and quails, well, I'd use number 7, to be honest. So bismuth does have quite a few uses outside of waterfowl. Put that back in there. I do keep my bismuth in a empty buffer can. But let's get this started and get my drink here out of the way. So we're using 24 of that. Now the wad, since it is a tapered hull wad, we need to get a pair of pliers, like I mentioned earlier, flaring out the gas seal of that wad to make it fit the larger diameter straight wall shells, which is really easy to do. Takes just about 3 or 4 seconds. Faster if you're not talking while doing it, but get that in the wad. You can see that is a good fit now. Without it, that wad would just fall straight in. But there you go. Now we need to add just a little bit of compression to it with the press. Now we need 1 ounce of bismuth. This is going to be, if I had the right pellet size, a load I would use for rabbits. So again, I would suggest a 5 or 6 size pellet. All I have is 3, so I'm making deal with what I got. Now that's not to say that the number 3 size right here wouldn't work for rabbits, but I just think 5 or 6 would be better. So we need 1 ounce of bismuth shot. So that is 437 to 438 grains, but I wouldn't worry about weighing it in grains. You don't need to be that precise. Just throw it in there until it says 1 ounce even. So I have 1 ounce exactly of bismuth in here, and guys, that fills the shot cup perfect. I think you can actually see it through the hole right here. These are somewhat transparent. Yeah, 1 ounce of bismuth is a perfect fit for the Claybuster Blue Wad, at least the number 3 size. If you're using a smaller pellet like a 6 or a 7, it would be a little bit less hot inside there. On the other side of that, if you're using, say, a number 1 or a B size pellet of bismuth, it would probably, that 1 ounce payload, overstack the wad. But anyway, let's crimp this. Front station of the 16 gauge Lee Load-All is the 6-point crimp starter, which is what I prefer. And guys, the Lee Load-All has a really nice crimp starter. Behind that, I have the GOP Rebacitor, this silver thing you see right here. I'll show you what that does if you haven't seen it yet. It's magic. A little bit right there. It obviously needs more, but you can see it starting to create a crease around the top of the hole right here. Let's get a little bit more pressure on there. And this should have it right here. Well, I accidentally pretty much closed it up. I did not mean to do that. Oh well, let's crimp this now. And guys, that's a really good crimp on that right there. It is nice and deep set, completely even. No waviness across the top, but no taper. To take care of that, well, I have a GOP BN2. I'll do that off camera, but here's what it looks like right now. You can see square edge. Check this out. So that BN2 was not necessary, but I like making really nice looking shells. That crimp right there is flawless. It looks better than a lot of factory rounds. That is a perfect crimp. No pinhole. It is pretty dang deep set. No way that'll ever come back open. And a perfect taper. As you can see, no pellets bulging out the hull at all. Not crushed anywhere. That is an awesome job. So there is a 1 ounce 16 gauge load of bismuth shot moving about 1200 FPS. Very easy to put these together. Bismuth will go through the bushings on a Lee Load-All just fine, like lead does, and some steel shot. But it does weigh a little bit less than lead. You'll probably have to move to the next size bushing, which would be 1 1/8 to get the 1 ounce payload. I have not messed with that, but I think you would have to move to the 1 1/8 ounce bushing. Bismuth is a lot closer to lead in terms of density than steel. But anyway, guys, that's going to end this one here. Please like and subscribe. We always appreciate that. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section below, and we'll get back to you. And if you want to, go check out our Patreon. It's as low as $1 a month, and you guys get early access to content. A link to that, as well as a link to our Instagram, Rumble, and merch store will be in the description below. But other than that, you guys take it easy, and we'll see you in the next one.